Hello, class. So I wanted to make sure we finished up these notes and you guys had a video available for you. So today we're going to talk about amending the Constitution here a little bit. So we already talked about the Bill of Rights and how the amendment process works. Let's look at some of the later amendments as well, like the 12th Amendment that made the ticket voting system. After Thomas Jefferson was John Adams vice president, and they were opposite parties and they hated each other's guts. We realized we had to change the way we elected our president from the person that gets first and second in the Electoral College will be president and vice president to a ticket voting system. Can you imagine Hillary Clinton being Trump's vice president right now? That's what would have happened without the 12th Amendment. 13th Amendment abolishes slavery, obviously very important. 14th and 15th Amendment are also Civil War amendments. So the 14th Amendment provides equality under the law and defines citizenship. The 15th Amendment gives black men the right to vote in the United States. The 17th Amendment makes it so that we popularly elect our senators. They used to be chosen by state legislatures. The 19th Amendment gives women the right to vote. The 21st Amendment is the only amendment we've ever had abolishing another amendment. The 21st Amendment ends prohibition in the United States, so it stops prohibition of alcohol. The 22nd Amendment, also known as the FDR Amendment, limits the president to 2 terms in office officially. And the 26th Amendment lowers the voting age to 18 nationally. So all of you people have the right to vote because of the 18th Amendment, and that was ratified because of the Vietnam War and pressure of making sure that young people were able to vote. There are other ways of changing the way our Constitution operates, though. The reason only 27 amendments have passed is because we've allowed basic legislation and other more simple ways of changing the way our Constitution operates take hold instead of the actual amendment process. So one is just basic legislation. Congress has the ability to regulate interstate trade and make any laws necessary and proper. We've interpreted those very broadly to permit the government to regulate a lot of different things. So, for example, anything that may cross one state into another state can be regulated. For example, federal government has the ability to regulate gun laws because Smith & Wesson produces their guns in North Carolina, for example, but sells them in Fort Wayne, Indiana. That product crosses state lines. Therefore, it's within the United States jurisdiction to regulate. And then you have things like the necessary and proper clause. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say Congress has the ability to make a Clean Air Act or a Clean Water Act or regulate any sort of business activity. However, it might be deemed necessary and proper after the progressive movement and the Industrial Revolution to make sure Rockefellers and Carnegies don't rule the world while everybody else lives in horrible poverty. We needed to regulate some things. Okay? Next, executive action. We've allowed our president to take a lot of action that would have been deemed unconstitutional by our founders. A lot of different examples here. First and foremost, with the commander-in-chief power. Let's start off with President Truman dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki without any checks on his power. That was not something the founders would have intended, but greatly expands the power of the presidency. Now, in modern times, we have unmanned drones. Unmanned drones are flown from distant places, and they can bomb our enemies from thousands of miles away, like you're playing a video game. President Obama used these extensively throughout the Middle East, and President Trump has continued that tradition. A lot of people question if the president should have the ability to use unmanned drones to attack people in foreign countries far away. Then you have presidents using executive agreements instead of negotiating treaties. Treaties are very difficult to negotiate and difficult to accomplish. Executive agreements are much simpler. President Obama was notorious for making one of these with Iran regarding their nuclear weapons program. President Trump signed a much looser agreement with Supreme Leader, Kim Jong-un in North Korea, instead of going through the proper channels of negotiating a treaty. Lastly, they use executive power very broadly within their branch to acquire surveillance powers, like with Edward Snowden and the NSA. Next, the Supreme Court. Their decisions can really change the way our society operates and how the Supreme Court and how our Justice Department operates. So, great examples are how technology has expanded so greatly over time. We've had to adjust for technological advancements, from wiretapping to cell phone privacy. Riley versus California is a great example of how the Supreme Court had to uphold individuals' right to privacy on their cell phone, and that police officers could not search your cell phone even if they wanted to. Then we can move forward. Things like Brown versus Board of Education, where we change our interpretation of the law. So Plessy versus Ferguson was the law of the land, instilling separate but equal, until Brown versus Board of Education happened, and we decided, you know what, that was wrong. We're going to change the way we interpret the 14th Amendment to say separate but equal is okay, to separate but equal is not okay. So it might take the Supreme Court a while to figure out that their decision's right or wrong, but they usually get there. Next, party practices and custom and usage. These are our last two. Party practices actually influence our country a lot, and they're not in the Constitution. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says anywhere about the Republican or the Democratic Party. But our entire politics are organized around the fact that we have two major political parties. So our parties are set up, for example, nominating candidates for public office. There's nowhere in the Constitution where it says how to nominate people for public office. Our parties take care of that with their primary and their conventions. So therefore, our parties are choosing our candidates. The way our Congress is set up is essentially established by the parties. So the Speaker of the House, the different committees and things like that, it's all broken up by party affiliation. They've changed the purpose of the Electoral College to say that it shouldn't just be whoever is the most popular candidate with these higher number of societies, but whatever party gets more votes gets more electoral votes. So parties have greatly changed the way our Constitution is viewed and operated. Lastly, custom and usage. Our government functions a lot based off of customs that have been established over a long period of time. For example, the director of the FBI, there's nowhere in the Constitution where it tells us how to appoint the director of the FBI and how they need to get approved. Or really any of the cabinet members for that matter. So what we've done over time is said, okay, they have to go through a similar process that judges have to go through. They have to get approved by the Senate. So that is the custom that we have created in the United States, how we approve of a president's cabinet, an EPA chief, an FBI director, and things like that. Another great example is the presidential third terms. FDR is the only president to ever serve a third term and will be the only president ever to serve a third term because of the 22nd Amendment. But before FDR, he was our 32nd president. We had 31 other presidents that only served 2 terms in office, many of whom sought a third term or were curious about a third term but held themselves back, besides Teddy Roosevelt, who ran for a third term and lost to Woodrow Wilson, because of this custom, because of this tradition. And I also mentioned this. Parties help establish our Congress, but so do customs and usage. We have a Speaker of the House, not because the Constitution preserves it, because that's the tradition we've established. We have a President pro tempore of the Senate that takes over for the Vice President when he's absent, not because that's what the Constitution says, but that's because what we've decided to do. It's our custom. It's the way we've been using it. All right, that's it for this section. Then we'll start 3.3 and 3.4 next. Thank you. Bye.